Nan.
Hi, Junie. Hello, everybody who might be watching or listening to us. My name is Nan Campbell. I'm coming from the beautiful prairies in Manitoba. It's a little bit like what's behind me right now. We're snowy today, and I am absolutely so thrilled to be here with my friend and mutual author, Junie Swadron. Junie, you are a multiply published author. As a psychotherapist, a public speaker, a creator of spaces for people to feel truly safe in, I just can't tell you how much you've had such a positive influence in my life. And above all else, I consider you to be a collaborator extraordinaire, always leading from your heart of service. So I'm so pleased to be here with you to talk about the power of writing in our lives.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Nan. And just for those of you who don't know where Manitoba is, that is kind of in the middle of Canada. And it is Canada, for those who don't really know. And Nan and I are also colleagues. We're both therapists and have also been friends for, oh gosh, a lot of years when you lived in Victoria. And writing is both of our passions. And so it's true, I have a new book coming out. I think it's being released tomorrow, which is the 28th of November, 2023. And that's really exciting. But we've decided that we would like to talk about the writing process itself, because both of us know the pain, the fear that comes with writing a blank page, when we're stuck, writer's block, which I don't believe in, which I can tell you about that later. And we know the benefits, the value, the absolute phenomenal feeling when we are able to put pen to paper and see the results of what that can do. So thank you, Nan, for agreeing to be part of this. I mean, here we are. We're co-creators of the Sunday writing circles that some people say, this is my Sunday church. Now, why do you think they say that?
I think that Sunday writing circles, just a little backstory, they became one of the most pivotal influences in my life during COVID. Because Junie, in your genius, you realized people needed to be able to connect. And the way we can connect is through the word, the written word, but also it is the sharing of the written word. So you launched Junie's Sunday Sacred Writing Circles online on Zoom. And dare I say, long before anybody was doing that during COVID, you were so quick to pivot. And so you and I co-facilitated these writing circles, and we had folks literally from around the globe join. And they were there on Sundays. There was a meditation to gather us together, to bring us all into the right here and now, which is so important. Then there was a check-in to let folks know where we're at. You know, we supported each other. And then there was generally maybe a provocative writing prompt or a silly one or a loving one. And we were given time to write together. And then we'd all return, and if comfortable, we would share. And then each member of the circle had an opportunity to reflect on the impact of the author's writing for them. Now, we're not talking about like published authors here. We're talking about Jill and Joe public, folks who are interested in what writing might offer them. And some folks had never written before. And I believe it is in the sharing of our writing that the magic begins. And that's was my experience. So why don't you tell me about the birth of the writing circle, Junie? Because it was going strong long before we were doing it on Zoom.
I tell you the truth, I don't remember the birth of it because it goes back so many years. Because
Wow.
as soon as way before Zoom was even around, and my writing circle started probably 30 odd years ago. At the same time, I put out a shiggle to be a psychotherapist and was helping people to move through their whatever emotional circumstances they happen to be in. I started facilitating writing circles. And why I did that is because writing was my way throughout my life as even a youngster. When I was given a little journal, diary, when I was a little kid, it became my safe place in order to have a voice.
Mm,
And when I started using that consistently in my life, I started to grow and realize, wow, even though I was silent on the outside, there were very few places in my life where I felt safe to express myself. Writing what I was feeling, thinking, remembering would be such an extraordinary salve for my
mm,
soul. And
mm,
so, of course, I started using it with my therapy clients. And I very quickly, within that, I think, first year, started facilitating writing groups. And it's just been one of the most sacred and beautiful experiences
mm.
that I, as a coach or therapist or writing facilitator, however you want to put it, um, it's one of my greatest joys. And why? Is because one of the things that you absolutely touched on, which I think is one of the most important things, is community.
Mm.
Because writing by itself and by ourselves, it's extraordinarily profound. The wisdom that seems to show up on the pages, it's like, what? Did I write that? Did I think that? Did I know that? Isn't it true? It's
Mm.
like, wow, where did that come from? Because we touch in and tap into another place within ourselves that reveals this kind of thing that we may not even be aware of. But the other thing, because yes, there's so many benefits to writing by ourselves, but when we come together in a group, there's something that just happens that is so magical. And as you say, you don't have to be a professional writer. You just have to be in your heart and be willing to experience what could come. And so what we do is we set up that sacred circle to make
Mhm.
sure that people start to feel safe and are safe. And then they're blown away. Oh my God, I can't believe I wrote that. The very first time. Can't believe I read it out loud. And yeah, there's a community that grows, and it just feels like people come on as strangers and leave as friends.
Mm. Ooh, if I may, I'm reminded of the very first time I met you, Junie. It was in Victoria, and you know, almost 2 decades ago. And I was responding to a bulletin that you had. This is long before we were communicating using technology as our platform. And there was this notice about a writing group. And I showed up. I actually wrote a check. I didn't even e-transfer you. It was before e-transfers, right?
Right. Right.
And these other people showed up too. And it was a small, intimate gathering on Thursday evenings.
Hmm.
That if it was Thursday evening, I was going to Junie's for writing. But I feel it's very important to also mention that at that point in my life, almost 20 years ago, I was in the midst of a profound, for lack of a better expression, I was in this protracted existential crisis, this feeling of who am I meant to be? Who am I really? And who do I think I am? Coming to this writing circle with these other people who have different experiences than me. And I found myself occasionally comparing myself to the people in the circle. And I think that is so common for all of us that we look inwards and we think, who do you think you are? But then with the sharing, I'll never forget we were writing and something came into me. I wrote a story about an experience I had in a laundromat. And as the other people in the group were listening and listening with such intention and such grace, they lit up. And it was that common experience, like, oh, the laundromat. Who would have thought that would be something we could connect on? And from that moment, whilst I didn't feel at that time, oh, I'm ready to be a published author, write a book, we can get a little bit more into how that actually became part of my reality. But at that point, it was the writing itself that became like my medicine, my sacred medicine.
Mm. So what is it about writing, and what was it that inspired you to come to a writing group? And how long have you been writing, and what is your experience about writing for you? I mean, you shared a little bit about coming to the writing group and having doubts and comparing, am I good enough? Who do I think I am? Which is so common. Can I spell? What if people think of me? Do I have the nerve? All of those things. Personally for you, Nan, when did you recognize for yourself that writing was going to be a medium, and for what reason?
Well, from the time of a young girl, I used to have a diary. And when I would look at my diaries and read them, this could be a common experience. I discovered I was kind of writing the same thing over and over and over again. And that felt a little like, I'm ready to level up to something different. And my hope was by joining a writing group with some support, I might be able to explore what else is there available for me. I've done lots of academic writing in, my education years. Uh, I know that my vocabulary is, pretty sparkly, but I didn't have the process of a practice. I think that's the key word, Junie. It's the practice. I didn't have the practice of a writing group or being a writer who wrote daily. And you introduced us to the concept of morning pages, which you might want to speak a little bit about. But I think it was the fact that I was now inspired and accountable because I had a group, and I wanted these people also to know that I respected their time and I cared deeply about them. And so I offered my writing as a way of being vulnerable, but also responsible for making a contribution to the group. So does that answer your question about the
No,
beginning?
I think so. I mean, it's yes, because it's honest, and that's how you came to it.
Mhm.
And can you tell us between that time till now, what has stood out for you when you write? Do you see yourself as a writer? I mean, you're obviously an author now too, so I want to talk about that. But what can we share here together that might inspire a tentative writer, somebody who's looking at writing but kind of scared, because writing often has this lofty kind of reputation that writers, authors are people that or stand by themselves somewhere, and somehow they come out with these magical books or whatever they do, and I'm not in that category. So I would like to dispel that myth for people, and I would really also like to help people who are wanting to engage in the writing practice but are afraid to, similar to some of the questions you asked yourself, and I can share some of the things that scared me too, because it's a commonality. And yet, because I've been doing it for so many years, since I was a kid, really, facilitating them for 30, that's a lot of decades as well, I know the value of what the writing can do for us. So I want to hear from you, from where you came to where you are, and how you can maybe help somebody who wants to do this. come to it?
So if I do a little time traveling, go back in time, um, my story is one that has a lot of trials and tribulations in it. Now, this might not be true for everybody. That's my story. I think the most important notion to wrap one's head around and also to surrender one's heart to is that we all have a story. We all contain stories. And when we put that pen on the paper and take ourselves back and reflect on what was going on at that time in my life, and then put the pen down and actually share that story. We don't always have to share it. Maybe we're sharing it with ourselves. Take a look at our younger selves or our wanting selves or our fearful selves, and we can offer compassion to that story that was such a big part of our development. Writing allows us to do that. Yeah, we can go out for coffee with a friend, but very often that's a very different kind of conversation. When we take the time to sit, whether it's 20 minutes or sometimes it's 10 minutes, like, ooh, I just got to get this out of me. It allows it to move from being stored in here. Sometimes it's a burden to hold on to it. When we write about it, it allows this movement. So the story is now not a burden. It's on the page, and it becomes, as you say, our voice in the world. That was my experience. Now, as we moved along in the process, I had sort of an on again, off again relationship with writing, Junie. Like, let's be really honest. That's what we're doing here. There would be times when I was really committed to the practice of morning pages, where I would get up in the morning, have my coffee, sit down in my chair with my journal, and I love having my special pen. And I would begin with gratitude, and then I would just write what was coming up for me in that morning. And it might be based on the gratitude piece, or it could be something that I was worried about that I could write into and reflect on, or almost like in a letter to myself or a letter to a loved one. There was all manner of writing in my journal in the morning. And then once we rejoined in the writing circle, all of a sudden it took on a whole other texture and value in my life. It became a powerful tool of expressing myself and where I was at. And it allowed people to get to know me. It also allowed me to get to know myself in a very different, loving way.
Beautiful. Thank you. Beautiful. You've touched on a few things that, one of those things that I find really profound is that people get to know each other so much faster and so much deeper to the core of who they really are in these writing circles. It bypasses all the niceties of the weather and how are you today and what did you do yesterday, and the kinds of things that we just have casual conversations about are really nice, but we don't really feel changed by them necessarily, or they may not trigger something within ourselves that, wow, I really want to look at that, or it's inspiring in some way for us to think about. So that to me is just a beautiful thing, because personally I hate small talk. It's not my thing. It bores me after a while. It doesn't have to be serious all the time either. As you know, some of the things, and many times, is there's tremendous laughter and joy, but the connection is pure, real, authentic. I want to also give credit where credit's due to Morning Pages. That's not my words. Those are Julia Cameron's from her beautiful book, The Artist's Way. She has a process doing Morning Pages, which I adopted, and thousands of people around the world have adopted. And it's a particular way of doing Morning Pages. Now, I love Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, and facilitated a support group for that book for 15 years and had the blessing, the privilege of having her beautiful endorsement on my first book, Rewrite Your Life. And, you know, she gave me a beautiful endorsement for that. And so, but I just wanted to make sure if anybody's listening, I didn't invent the Morning Pages, but it's a beautiful, and I don't even know if I call them that because it's a little bit different than the way in which she uses that structure, which is beautiful in and of itself. To me, it is, though, being able to wake up and before, you know, we're into our day, and so many of us are just, oh, feet hit the ground and we're off running. No, just, you know, you can just sit up in bed with your eyes still closed and have an intention of how you want your day to go. You can gently pick up your journal and just as you did, you know, gratitude might be one of the things that you write about first, and then let it flow into what your day is or how, whatever's there. As you say, sometimes we just want to unburden ourselves, take it out of our body and onto the page, and then go on with our day. And just see, because when we write something, it turns up the energy inside. It's like, it's, you know, like you were saying earlier, sometimes we write the same thing over and over, but one day we might just say, wait a minute, I want up that level or something, and become aware of that, and something new comes in and a new energy. And as opposed to staying stuck in the same, you know, groove of a record, it's like, wait a minute, what else is there here? When we set an intention and then just learn who we are during that. And one of the, sometimes it's interesting to me still how many people have come to learn the structure or the practice of writing and what that can look like, that are still so concerned about, well, I don't know if I can spell well, you know, my spelling is awful, and, you know, grammar, I don't know all those techniques. But the beauty of this kind of writing that just comes from within, where I'd say, let the writing do the writing. It doesn't care about spelling or grammar or punctuation or syntax or all those things that we learn in school. And we just set that aside and we come from our heart, and it's like having a conversation with a best friend or our highest self, where we're just having a conversation and we're just releasing what we're feeling, and we're saying it without feeling like we need to edit it. We have to edit our words. We have to, you know, say it perfectly. We have to, in case we get it wrong, there's no wrong. And when there's no right or wrong, you can't do it wrong. You're just allowing yourself to love yourself enough to open the channel and let the words flow. And it might sound unattainable, but my gosh, it is so attainable. And I know, I was just going to say, for me, oh my gosh, years ago when I started my writing, and deciding to do a writing group, I got so excited because I read Natalie Goldberg's book, Writing Down the Bones. And we're talking 30 odd years ago now. That was her first book. And I was seeing a psychiatrist at the time for my multiple issues. And I really liked this guy. And I got so excited when I read the book over a weekend. I went to see him and I said, Doc, I'm going to start doing writing groups. And it just felt so good, because up until then, to be really honest, completely transparent, I don't think I really talked to that guy up until I wrote and read to him what I wrote. I didn't feel confident to speak out loud without crying or without stumbling or without stuttering or without feeling like an idiot. But somehow I had, since I was a kid, developed, felt okay about my writing, even though it wasn't, even in those years, is it going to be good enough? I had to express myself some way, so I didn't just talk to him. I read him what I wrote. And he could hear it. He was willing to just listen to what I wrote, and then we could have a conversation. He would ask me pertinent questions, and I could just go from there. But that was kind of my lead-in. But when I went to see him, oh, this is such a funny story, because when I went to see him and I was all pumped up and I'd read that book and I thought, gosh, she writes like I do. I write like her. I could do this. And felt so empowered. And I went to him and he goes, do you have a degree in writing? No. Well, have you ever done this before? No. Don't you think it would take a lot of chutzpah? Yeah, I guess. Well, judging from the writing that you've been doing and sharing with me all this time, Junie, you better go for it. So he built me up to feel awful, and then he was such a jokester anyway. So that's how it started. It started because I got inspired by someone else and thought, I can do this. And that was the beginning for me. And we all learned from our mentors. So there's so much that we can say about writing. And one other thing I want to say, and then we can share more, is that sometimes the things that I wrote that carried so much pain or grief or distress or don't know where to go from here, those things that started off that way often became my best poems or short stories or the beginning of a composition or a song lyric or something that I had no awareness when I went to the page just to release what was going. They could morph into something really beautifully creative. And now, of course, books. Tell me about you in that way.
I was going to say a few things are coming up for me. And I know miracle is a strong word, but I do believe that it's nothing short of miraculous that a human such as myself was able to move from that place of such deep, almost crippling self-doubt to a place where I could open when you open the page and it's smooth, and I would pick up my pen and the writing prompt or whatever it was what I dropped into. And then I would set a timer and whatever came up, came up. And because it was from my heart and my lived experience, it was my truth. And so much of the way we live our lives today, think of social media. We know that, is that our truth? What's posted on social media? Not necessarily. That's the way we want to be seen, perhaps. But writing is our truth mistress. May I say that? At least that's what she is for me. And I found great validation. And I'm going to say the H word, healing. I know, sometimes we're reluctant to pose that as a proposition here, but for me personally, I have to say, writing into my stories literally led me to a place of deep healing. And writing the same story, like, for example, the same story of me at 8 years old, but writing it from a number of perspectives, writing that story a few times gave me such new insight into what was going on for me. And then being able to have deep compassion and sometimes just laughing at the hilarity of what was happening in my life. So the act of writing is one thing, but then allowing that flow, that energy, that sharing is a whole other opportunity to come together in a group for mutual care and support, but also to, I'm going to say this, you've said the L word, for self-love. I was sorely lacking in any form of self-love. And Junie, I have to say this, you were the individual that consistently asked me to return to myself, to remind me that I'm worthy of my own love, that I'm worthy of the love of others. And it's in that sacred space. And folks, they don't understand, if they're new to this whole process of what writing can offer us as a practice, it might be hard to believe that it can actually offer us self-love and tremendous gratitude for the practice, but also for the growth. That's what it is, the growth. So I'm reminded of when we began a project of yours called the Author Mentorship Program. Can I bring that up?
Of course, it's still happening.
You've done so many things, Junie. It's just like, where should we go? But the Author Mentorship Program, or AMP for short, like amp it up.
Ramp up.
Yeah.
I never thought of that before just now.
Yeah. So, it amplified the whole experience. That's where the role of writing in my life took a real turn. That's the program that allowed me to be in community, but also to be really connected with you as my writing sister, my writing coach.
And may I say, as a published author.
Yeah, and it moved me into taking my stories. I'll never forget the day that you asked me, "What do you need, Nan?" And I said these words, "I need a scaffolding, Junie. I need something to be able to, sort of climb around on, like or like a play structure, I needed some form of structure." And we did this exercise together. And before I knew it, there was the whole constellation right before my very eyes. Even in therapy, I use that analogy of our constellation, and the stars light up. And then was born, I almost forgot I was happy, because my stars began to light up. I began to write about those deepest stories that were so in me. Sometimes they were being held by shame or worry or guilt, or just they hadn't even crossed my mind as something one could write about. And before you knew it, there was a book.
I almost forgot I was happy. What
Yeah.
an extraordinary book of your life stories.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You didn't leave anything out. And that's
No,
one of
I
the
did.
things
I
that
did go right to the bone, as Natalie would
yes,
say,
you did. Yes, you did. Right to the marrow. Yes,
Mhm.
you did. And what an example you use. I mean, your writing is, to have gone from a tentative writer or not even sure to allowing yourself to go as deep as you could go without necessarily thinking, okay, I think I'll go as deep. No, over time, you learn to trust the process and allowed the words to show up. And, sometimes in the reading back is when we really learn what we've written, right? Because sometimes it's just a matter of getting it out and whatever, and it's just flowing, and it is. And then you go, whoo, did I write that? And do I want to put that out in the world? Is the next one. It's like, okay, this is great, this is intimate, it's between you and me, or it's between a circle of or whatever of the AMP members or whoever, the author mentorship program members. But do I really want to expose myself this way? And that becomes a whole new level of, oh, and you, Nan Campbell, chose to do that, as have I, as have many, many others, thank goodness, who are willing to mentor the authentic human experience. We are so used to in our culture, how are you? I'm fine. Hi, thanks. I'm just great. How are you? Oh, I'm fine too. Meanwhile, the most awful things have happened to both. Who are you? Who I'm fine, but we don't say so. We want to mask it to appear fine. Like you mentioned social media, people put on Facebook or wherever all the most wonderful things or not, but they pretend they are, or they make them up, or I don't know what, so that we'll all think we're all living a graced life. And please, may that be so. But hey, the human experience is the human experience. And not one human that I know of from the beginning of time can walk this human experience without experiencing loss or grief or disappointment or fear or all the different things that we go through while we're alive that hurt our heart. And to be able to name that in our stories, what does that do? It allows connectivity. Like you said, a laundromat, how could that even, right? Some kind of crazy, who knows where I got that one, or you did, or whatever, a prompt to do that. And all of a sudden people are laughing together. I know when that happened. It provides connectivity, and you're not alone. And so I thank you for being willing to go that deep in your book, in your stories, and then present them to the public the way you are and have.
I'm just going to bring in a little bit of some of my deepest beliefs around human nature and the whole arc of our lives. I believe deeply that we are born whole, that we are born to connect. We know this. Research has proven that we're wired to connect, and that we're wired to be creative and curious and find those calm moments, and to have compassion for ourselves and others, to be courageous. Some therapists call these the 8 C's, of being self-led. And the writing process, this practice, allows us to bring all of that forward so that we can be curious about, I found myself, when it was time to sit down and write, I would get that tea or that coffee, or depending on, what my beverage of choice was at the time. And I knew that I was going to write something about money or my father. And I would wonder, what will it be? And then when my timer was off, because I would set a timer, I would look up and go, whoa, I didn't know that was the story that was going to come out. That was the marvel in all of this experience, Junie. And the more that I became confident, that's another one of those 8 C's, in that it doesn't matter where I'm beginning today. I know that when I'm complete in this time, there will be something there that is new, that I had not expressed before.
Yeah, and that's pretty potent. That's so powerful.
I'm curious about right where you are. Can you tell me a little bit about What inspired you to make that really courageous move into publishing a book for folks who are tentatively considering or maybe not even considering writing?
I think it's also part of human nature that when we know something, we've experienced it, and we know the truth of it, we want to share it. And so I named my very, very, very first writing group 30 years ago, I guess, Right Where You Are. I remember doing it. I remember doing it at OISE in Toronto, which is part of the University of Toronto. And it was the first time, and I did a lot of publicity, I guess, because over 100 people showed up. And I know, and I'm going, holy, really? Seriously? Is this for my group? Did they get the wrong room? And yet the more people that came in, the more excited I got. And the technique or the process hasn't changed that much over the years, to be very honest. Right where you are, it's a kind of fun, cutesy little phrase, right where you are, WRITE. It's more than that. It's about being in this moment right here, right now, where you are when you're writing. It's writing from the place we are in now. And there's such power, the power of now, Eckhart Tolle, and everybody else that speaks about mindfulness and the power of this truth right now. Because even when we're writing about something that happened years ago, it's our energy with that. It's our energy to that particular time, place, people, experience that's coming through right now that we're honoring. And that's why it's so important. And so over the years, I've developed this recognition that the power of writing can serve us in so many ways. You mentioned, and I'll go back to the book in a minute, but you mentioned healing with writing. This year, as you know, I've gone through a very challenging year with cancer. And to the place where I wasn't even sure whether I'd live at some certain points, right? It was very serious in this inoperable and rare form of cancer. And it's just this past month that I got you are clear. We'll see in 5 years from now, but I'm sure I will be. But huge gratitude for thank you, God, because I wasn't ready to leave the planet at this point. I knew there was more life in me, and I used writing to help heal my cancer. I would write to it. I would write to my cells. I would write to God. I recently wrote a letter, Dear Death. And the kinds of things most of us don't even talk about in our culture, and had a real intimate connection and relationship with death. And came out of that experience so happy, so proud of this letter that I wrote to Dear Death about my courage and listening to what death had to say to me in response to where I am right now, and when death tells me it will escort me from this world to the next at another time. Gosh, things that I had no idea in some ways, consciously came through. So yes, healing that comes from the writing, from my own mental health issues to physical issues, to writing, to use writing for how do I speak to this person, and writing what I want to say, or being really angry, so angry, and instead of just over somebody, to write it out first. What I call the angry, blaming, uncensored letter that you never send. You do not put it in an envelope. You don't put it in an email. You don't put it on, God forbid, social media. You write a letter in a pen and paper, and you just say it all, everything that you have to say. Get it out of your body, get out that rage, get out the resentment, get out everything you're feeling bad about. And then give it some time.
Mm.
And oh my gosh, again and again, me and clients and people I know who have used this process, you too, of course. Number one, the clarity. Number one, the relief just to be able to say it, because most of us wouldn't say what we are thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We're just, or if we do, then we regret having said stuff. There is such, again, the wisdom. I can't keep not saying that. The wisdom, the insight, the knowledge that comes through to be able to get out from our core, sometimes what that little kid in us wants to scream out because it's not having a voice. Once we do that, I know for me personally, number one, there's a great release and a relief in letting go of the writing. And then there's a new awareness that pops through. Wow, I can see my role in this. I can often see how I co-created the situation. Not always, but quite often. But whatever it is, when I do get to the place where I want to share my feelings with this person, I'm coming from a centered, grounded, empowered place. I'm not filled with emotion that's ready to just scream out. No, I'm centered, I'm grounded, and ready to have a conversation.
I'm wondering if I can just dovetail from that place that you were just describing. I could really feel it, Junie. And it took me back to the process of writing about my family, my mother and my father in particular. And you speak about the grace of the here and now. The mindfulness it's everywhere. We know what it is. But to truly experience that moment of clarity, it takes a few times. What my big aha moment was, as I wrote these different stories, let's take my mother, for example, who doesn't have mommy issues. So anyways,
Right?
as I'm writing these various stories of my mother from very different perspectives, not only were layers peeled away, we talk about the onion and peeling away the layers, but I felt like I was actually leveling up, that I was getting a whole new perspective on what my mother was all about, what her experience was about.
True.
And absolutely, it allowed me the spaciousness to recognize that I had a new relationship with her because I had been writing so deeply about those times with her. Some of them beautiful, some of them tragic. But that writing process, Junie, allowed me to recreate that relationship with my own mother. That
So
is
happy.
something.
Oh, I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because that is so important. It is so true that when we're willing to go down that deep rabbit hole of the relationships that we have that have shaped our lives, that have been really, really important, that there's room, we make room for a brand new, open relationship that can bring in so much more light.
Yeah.
And so much more awareness that we probably didn't have before.
Mhm.
I know that even in those angry letters that I write, there's a sense of compassion that can now come towards whoever it was, and compassion for me, for the loss of something or being misunderstood or God knows what. But every human emotion can come through in the writing and can strengthen us
Mm.
and bring us a brand new awareness with ourselves, first of all. You know, as you know, in my book and in the author mentorship program and the book Your Life Matters, which is all about writing memoir or writing our life stories, there is one of the most important reasons I've learned why people choose to do this process is to have a greater relationship with themselves.
Mm.
Many
Yeah.
people want to write their stories to bring out whatever it is and share them, etc. But the first and foremost reason I've heard from so many people is they want to explore their lives in a way they've never taken the time to. And
Mm.
most of us never take the time to because we're just living our life. And many of us, when we've gone through something challenging and that door is closed, we're finally on the other side of it. It's gone, how did I even get to the other side of it? And it's like, whew, now we're on to our next thing. We're on to the next without really reflecting back on truly, how did we get from A to B? How
Mhm.
did we cross that bridge? How did we reach the other side? What were our strengths?
Mhm. You know, I feel like adding something right now, just
Yeah, yeah.
because we're going really deep in this moment, but something in me was like, "Oh, let's come up and little paddle around on the surface of the water for a bit and play here," because we also can be incredibly playful. Like this whole new way of using words that in a playful manner to express the craziest of times, like, can't believe I got through that one. Or just using words in a manner that lifts us up. It doesn't have to be so deep and dark and like we're going in there and we're going to mine for the deepest in us. It's not all about that. It's also pure joy or celebratory or laugh out loud funny. So I think there's room for all of this in the practice.
Oh, there absolutely is. It's and.
Yeah.
It's and. We just never know what's going to come out. And I
Mm.
was just going to see if I can find something that became a really fun song on the my hopefully next big accomplishment with my husband David for our musical called Today. And so that's hopefully something that's going to come to fruition in 2024 or 2025, but starting it this year because a whole musical
Mhm.
production is a big deal. But anyway, I
Yeah.
don't think I can find the song. I'm not
But
sure.
if
I
you
think it
want to
was.
take a moment to look for it, I just feel it bears mentioning that you are an extraordinary human who has leveled up at every single turn in the road, whether it's creating new programs to support folks, whether it's working in the realm of mental health, or dare I say, designing online programs before anybody was even doing such a thing, having meditations on Insight Timer, having your own app, having two coloring books that you've created, co-created. Like you're just one living, breathing, creative, spiritual being. And who knows what's next for you, Junie? I
Who
know
knows?
you've already got two books in play right now. Like
Yeah,
you're
during a
just
cancer journey. So I
extraordinary.
have to look at myself too, thinking, oh my gosh, how did that happen during this year? that 2 books got written and published
Mhm.
this year, but yeah. So I found it, and it's
Okay.
fun. It's such a fun thing because it's one of the things that I was, we were talking about how some of the most painful entries can become the most fun poems or
Yeah.
lyrics or whatever. So this became a song, which I won't sing. Well, I might sing. I don't know, but I won't. Okay, ignore the voice. Okay, I'll keep my day job. But fear of flying, afraid of life. It's called the phobia song. Did I say that already? Fear of flying, afraid of strife. Fear of losing, afraid to win. Goodness gracious, where does one begin? Claustrophobia, agoraphobia, phobias we can't spell. Pathophobia, xenophobia, hydrophobia, zoophobia. We know them well. Now, what would Freud or Jung say if they were in this room? Their likely fear would be get out of here in case they caught the gloom. Are we crazy? Oh, no, we're not. We're simply concerned by what we've got. Fear of hunger, afraid of that, fear of wars, chores, and doors. Can you imagine that? Fear of Satan, afraid of God. Is there anything here we're not afraid of? Between our birth and dying, we have so much to fear. Was God, you think, in his right mind to have ever put us here? Fear of cats, afraid of snakes, a fear of laughter, for goodness sakes. Fear of aging or growing too tall. Face it, if it's not worth fearing, is it worth it at all? Fear of getting out of bed, a fear of eternal sin, a fear of germs, afraid of worms, afraid of your own kin, afraid of black, afraid of white, afraid of in between, afraid of going out alone, afraid of being seen. Are we crazy? Well, maybe yes. You decide, it's anyone's guess. Are we crazy? Well, maybe not. Isn't it something everyone's got? La 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 la.
I love that you shared that because that's exactly the playfulness I'm talking about.
I know, and here it is in my new book, Rewrite Your Life
Oh my
Too. Peace
gosh,
awaits you. Yeah.
that's magnificent, Junie. And I just want to bring one more thing to light as we're sharing this time together, is that no matter who you are, if you have one of Junie Swadron's publications with you, especially this new one, right where you are, and the whole guided journey that you take the reader on, the reader and writer on, there is this felt sense of you are with us.
Mm.
You share so deeply. We're right with you as you describe these stories. And almost becomes like a dialogue between Junie and me, or Junie and whoever the person is who has that book in front of them. The invitation is there to come and play, come and write, come and, shed your tears if you need to. Whatever it is, it's invitational. And it's one of your true gifts, Junie. And it cannot be said enough how many thousands of people who have heeded the invitation that you offer, and their lives truly have been bettered by whether they're seeing one of your productions, reading one of your books, writing in one of your circles, joining you on Facebook. There's really nowhere in the world you need to be alone because Junie can be with you. So with that question, I'm curious about, where can people find you, Junie?
Okay, well, I'll tell them where they can find me in 1 minute. I
Okay.
have something I want to say first.
All right. We'll put a pin in that.
Okay, yes, a pin. I want to say thank you to you, Nan, and let people know that it's really, I find having a coach to go through things with is really important. So I am honored to be a coach for many people over the years, and I will still do that. It's one of my biggest joys in life is coaching people, either in therapy or through writing their books or you name it. And Nan, thank you for being my coach in the second writing of Right Where You Are, book 2. Because if it wasn't for you, who knows, maybe it wouldn't have happened. I reached out to you because I needed a coach. And you were there for me through every new story in that book.
Mm,
And you gave me insights where I had blind spots,
mm,
and we worked it together. And
mm.
so I thank you with all my heart, because that book I am so proud of. And for those of you who are watching this, you can get it at your favorite online bookstore, and maybe in a bookstore where you live. It was published by Morgan James Publishing Company. And again, you may be watching this after the actual publication date, which is tomorrow, the 28th of November, 2023. And whenever you can order it from me, you'll get an autographed copy, or you can order it online. And I just want to thank you again, Nan, for helping me, because we all need it. Yeah, I maybe been writing all my life, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, I know how to write, but it's such a worthwhile, rich, essential, I think, process to write with a guide, with somebody who meets you where you are, doesn't judge you, doesn't say, oh, that's stupid. Anybody who says that to you about anything, know that they're just not in a good place. You would want to be them. Don't listen to them. They're not stupid. When I say about myself, oh, Junie, I forgot your keys again. God, you're stupid. I don't do that anymore. But when I used to, I could put my hands on my heart and I'd say, honey, I'm so sorry. You're not stupid. No. So we don't want to be saying bad things to ourselves. And we getting back on track here. I thank you, Nan Campbell, for being my coach, my guide, my mentor through this process of right where you are. And yeah, where can people find me? JunieSwadron.com. That's my website. And my email is yourlifematters@JunieSwadron.com. That's this book. And I unfortunately don't have the brand new copy of Right Where You Are just yet. So I can't show you that one, but this is what the other one looked like. And it's still a beautiful book and I love it. And so some of those same things are in the new one, but it's got so much more material and vital material to help you if you are somebody who wants to write and don't know where to begin, or you're a seasoned writer, but you just want to get more tips. And so I thank you, Nan, for saying yes to my ask about coming on today and just sharing our own fears about writing and processes about writing and successes about writing. And for those of you who are watching today, please just pick up your pen and say yes. And please stay tuned. If you want to be part of, get my emails that will tell you in my newsletters when are the next workshops that I'm going to be planning. And that's just Junie Swadron at yourlifematters.com. No, it's the other way around. Your Life Matters at JunieSwadron.com. Yes. Anyway, we'll go to my website and just join my what is it?
The newsletter is
Newsletter.
so full of really great information, and then you'll never be alone again, because you'll have Junie by your side.
Thank you. So we'll leave you with a writing prompt today. Nan, have you got any ideas? Let's see, we'll leave you with a writing prompt.
Here we go.
Yes.
So I'm going to use as a springboard the notion of loneliness is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if we use that as what we want to be able to move through and go deep inside and go, my dear friend, I love you. I want to share the most beautiful parts of me with you. And here they are.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. Okay. So God bless. And we'll be back. We'll be back. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.